Welcome again, boys and girls.
What up?
It's Channel Kachko. And we're here, Grim and Shaf. We're gonna do a special one. It was kind of me, one last minute. I have HBO Max, and Suicide Squad came out, and we've been kind of dying to see that. Go ahead.
Yeah, we still need to create a title for this. I assume we're going to do it quite often, in my opinion.
What's that? Just like show or movie reviews?
Yeah, so insert a name that you think would be cool. We might think of one while we're brainstorming, so.
Review...
Oh.
Ramblings. I don't know. I'm just kind of... I'm trying to do the double letter acronym. Yeah.
I would say it's something from the couch.
Or commentary from the couch. There you go. Anyway, but yes, we are here to talk about the new James Gunn Suicide Squad. And
Suicide Squad, not to confuse.
Yeah.
Suicide Squad, which was the first one.
Oh, so they added the... Who else did that? Someone else did that, and it was like, oh, okay. Like, it was just kind of like, no, it's the... I'll put it up there eventually. I'll have to research it while I'm editing. But here we are. We're here to talk about it, give our general ideas and kind of like the plot and things like that. But we'll first delve into non-spoiler stuff first, and of course we will eventually put
Spoil
it up
everything,
there.
ruin it before you do it. No, I'm
Exactly.
kidding.
We'll timestamp it or something. I'll figure that out
We'll
finally.
we'll do our alert thing if we need to.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, general with it all, like, James Gunn, I'm a fan personally.
Yeah.
I don't really know his work much outside of the
movies.
Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that. But I was really happy when he got fired from Disney, essentially,
Right.
or put on hiatus, and Warner Brothers was like, "All right, fuck that, let's grab his ass," and so they got him. He signed up, and they basically gave him free reign, which was really cool of Warner Brothers, in my opinion. Kind of finally giving a director to, stretch his chops and everything like that. And honestly, this was surprising to me because there was a lot of Marvel people in this.
Yes.
And which was very interesting. It was kind of a cool crossover to me.
And the interesting dynamic is just like you've seen how series get affected when there's too much control. Case in point, Star Wars 7, 8, and 9, where
Basically everything
just gets ruined.
Well, I was just about to say, like, basically every Warner Brothers movie, unfortunately, outside of I would say Shazam. In my opinion, well, I'll jump into that later, much later.
Other examples being the Justice League, before Zack Snyder kind of did his own thing and came back with it. There's been a lot of times where the head honchos kind of mess with something and make it less genuine and less entertaining, in my opinion. And like you said, you were very happy when James Gunn was on hiatus or whatever the term is.
Fired from Disney, essentially. Like, they were like, okay, you're not doing Guardians anymore, and of course there was
he said something hugely
pedophilia, kind of, sort of, like in a tweet or something like that.
He said something years ago that got brought back up, and he got in trouble for it, essentially.
Yeah. Cancel culture. In its finest.
But the thing is, it's just like, for me, it was kind of the opposite, because I enjoyed James Gunn a lot. Yet again, still, most of my understanding of him is from Marvel movies. I really like Guardians 1 and 2, and I thought that would be kind of tragic. I thought that this transition kind of created a bridge for Marvel directors who either get canned, maybe from saying something inflammatory, or who just didn't like the restrictions of Kevin Feige, to transition and then make great movies for DC. My wholeheartedness is I love Marvel more than DC, no offense. I only like Batman, per se, in comparison to so many different properties, names, and etc. on Marvel.
Sure. And, as you guys know, I'm more of a DC guy myself, but like the thing I like about DC is they're not afraid to push the envelope, and whereas Marvel's, at least in the past 20 years, I'd say, roughly, maybe even more than that, I feel like they've always kind of gone the safe route. on a lot of stuff.
It's also
Now, you could debate DC has done the same thing with a lot of, at least a lot of their major characters,
right.
but you know, I think in the manner that DC's always kind of had the balls to like change the status quo for a lot of superheroes, if you will,
it's also
and make it permanent.
It's also more difficult specifically because Disney is the parent company for Marvel.
Yeah.
You're basically playing nice to a lot of different leaders. You know,
Yeah.
you have your Marvel heads, you have your Disney heads, and then you just have this overall people watching over you.
You know, and no hatred on Disney. I understand their business and everything else like that. But you know, at the same time, I don't hate what they've done. I think the MCU is a monument of great series filmography, if you will, like one that'll probably set the stage for the future. I think this was the first time someone was able, holy smokes, Lucy, my dog is just farting it up right now. Holy
I
cow.
thought you were just mesmerized to tears about how well Marvel did with the first 4 phases.
I'll give it, Endgame was awesome.
Right.
But yeah, anyway, you know, for me, like, there was a lot of good stuff, and yes, you could say Marvel movies are pretty one note, kind of paint by the numbers, if you will, but they're executed well, and there's a lot of character development and stuff like that, which really brings you into the film.
Right.
And like the thing with, I think on the flip side with DC is, I kind of feel like they kind of forego a lot of origin story stuff. Mm-hmm. But that's my personal opinion. More so than like if we're comparing Marvel to Disney or Marvel to DC.
Right.
But that's how I see it. Whereas like in this film especially, they just go right into it. Like, hey, this is like no bullshit. You already know who the Suicide Squad is, essentially, and what's going on. So you know, James Gunn in this film just kind of basically throws you into their first mission right out of the gate, with where your the exposition is kind of told through Savant, which is Michael Rooker, his character, and it was neat in that manner because it was just like, okay, we're getting right into this. There's no setup. You don't really know what's going on. They're just thrown into it, and you're kind of, I guess, on the Suicide Squad's level of what you know what's going on essentially, and of course, as with Waller and everything, there's always smoke and mirrors and crap like that.
Sure.
So, but yeah, we'll go ahead.
No, you're good. So the thing is for me, in terms of understanding DC, it's a lot harder for me, because honestly, in the last 10 years, let's say, the only DC movies I've seen were the Dark Knight trilogy.
Okay.
I saw the original Suicide Squad, I saw the Joker, I saw this Suicide Squad, and that's it.
Okay.
Nothing else.
You need to see Wonder Woman, the first one.
And you lent it on Blu-ray. It's sitting on a shelf.
Oh, okay. I was going to say you need to borrow it, but I forgot I gave it to you. But yeah, it's, for me, like, I will admit 100%, like, I believe it or not, I actually watched Carter, the 70s Wonder Woman as a child.
Linda Carter.
Linda Carter, thank you. I watched that, but outside of that, I don't really know much about Wonder Woman outside of what I've seen in comics or other media.
Random pop culture, Amazon, Invisible Jet, Last
no pun intended.
No.
Anyway, but yeah, so we, you know, for me, like, I'll admit that, but like, I've read a lot of like the crossover stuff where it's like all of them together, including Wonder Woman and stuff like that, and I've enjoyed it. Like, DC always tries to have kind of like a lightheartedness, but also very dark turn with a lot of their, at least in the comic book series. And I will say I kind of jumped off DC as of late, but at least from 2012 until 2016, I was pretty adamant on collecting DC comics. And so I could say, like, you know, at least in that time frame, which is pretty small, all things considered, in the general scheme of things, you know, I liked their tongue-in-cheek approach, not taking themselves too seriously, at least with a lot of the B and C and D, whatever else. Like, obviously, your A-listers, Batman's always going to be Batman.
Right.
And, you know, Superman, that kind of a thing. He's usually the the ace up the sleeve kind of BS, but and they always have to win him over to finally do what they want. Right. But, you know, that's... I've just that's why I've always liked DC, whereas Marvel's more like a feel good, like let's come together, let's do this, justice.
My experience with Marvel in the last 10 years is basically ginormous event that possibly could be an amazing story and an amazing turn and something that could be absolutely priceless, and then you're always let down because they can't take that gigantic leap. They can't kill that person off, and things that
Wolverine.
things that were amazing ideas are lost in the mix. I think we'll get to that on next time we jump into a Marvel movie and things of that sort. I honestly think in terms of a movie, and we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this particular movie in a second, but I think this was a great movie. In my opinion, if I had to go out of a 10 scale, and I know numbers are very arbitrary, but I think I would give this an 8.5. I think it was very entertaining. I thought it was good. It was not perfect.
No.
Like comparing it to what you said about Endgame was fantastic. Endgame kind of gave you all types of emotions. Your ups, your downs, and then had
But for me, that's not really comparing evenly.
No, I mean
scaled things.
It's a gigantic conclusion to an epic saga versus an entry that was going to change your perspective, hopefully, about DC.
Yeah.
But that's why the 8.5 seems fitting for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I was thinking of 8 range. It's for me like I really enjoyed Shazam. Like I loved that.
I really
film.
wanted to watch that one.
That is actually very good in my opinion. I enjoyed it a lot. It was very. I've always known about Shazam, at least I should say since 2012, and more deeper than a regular like, oh yeah, I'm a fanboy, but
it's not like, oh, the Blue Beetle.
yeah. Which is, by the way, the Mickey. So yeah. Anyway, the thing with this is like I liked Shazam because I like the humor in it, the origin story of it. Like, yes, it was an origin story, but they made it very well, in my opinion, because it was just one of those things where he was figuring out his powers. The thing that turned it on its head was the fact that he was like. 12 or something like that, maybe 15. I don't know.
Young teenager.
Yes, Billy Batson. I don't know, but and just like him becoming an adult superhero essentially, right. And like the humor that comes with that.
It's like Big, but superhero size.
Yeah, becoming a superhero essentially, and which was neat to me. I actually loved Big as a child, so maybe that's what it is. A little nostalgia factor. Yeah, Tom Hanks, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we I loved it. Like it was really good. With this movie, now do I think it's Shazam level? No, I think it's close, but I think it's not very. It's very fast paced, and like the thing I read with a lot of reviews is like they were like, oh, when, like you don't know who's gonna die, kind of a thing, and. I disagree a little bit. I kind of feel like I mean, yes, you didn't like. There were some surprises, which we'll get into later. Right. Maybe for me, I should say. But honestly, most of the people that died, I kind of figured were going to die, and the ones I knew in my head, I'm like, there's no way DC is ever going to kill
Vader,
them.
You just didn't see that one
coming
at all.
It was just. Yeah. It was just kind of one of those things where it was like, I know these people are going to live.
Right.
Like, they're not going to kill these people. They're too big.
Right.
But, and they didn't. But, yeah, so, it was neat in that manner. I liked the humor. It was definitely James Gunn. He definitely went for the dark end on this one. Like, the deaths in this are brutal.
Right.
And, especially on the superheroes. I mean, one gets his face shot off, basically. And
a couple of them did.
Yeah. Well, yeah. One got smashed like a bug. Like, just funny stuff like that. Yeah. Like, it's a little dark humor for sure. So if you're not a fan of that kind of stuff, definitely this is not your thing. But then again, if you're watching Suicide Squad, what the fuck are you doing? Like, right. But
yeah, I mean, I think generally we really enjoyed the movie. I don't think there was a moment while watching it together, whereas they were like or complaining in that aspect. There was a lot of like oh my god, or awesomeness. But I think now that we've gotten our general thoughts on the movie taken care of, I think we should just jump into the meat and the potatoes and the specifics that we loved and did not like about the particular movie. So, without further ado, this is where Schaefer makes a noise saying spoilers are coming up.
Spoilers, ooh, no,
You've been warned.
Ooh, so yeah, we're gonna do it from now on. Definitely diving into the story and what as it progresses and stuff like that. It's, as we're started, like I said, you see it through Savant's eyes, which I don't really know his superpowers. I won't lie. And James Gunn has come out and said multiple times that he was inspired by like the 70s, 80s Suicide Squad. So definitely know nothing about that age myself.
Right.
I know just what I've been able to read on Wiki, but it's very good. It's like they bring out a lot of different people that I've never heard of, but like they all have he just has fun with it, especially in the first 10 minutes, I'd say.
I would even say 25, because once they go into the other thing, you start seeing Easter eggs, like the calendar person that you mentioned.
Oh,
I
yeah,
had no
yeah.
idea who it was.
Yeah, Calendar Man.
There's a lot of nice Easter eggs and a lot of things that I really enjoyed about that.
It's definitely a movie where it's like maybe if you watched it again, you would probably pick up on stuff like. There were things like the only reason why I noticed Calendar Man is because he has a very prominent tattoo across his forehead, and when I saw that, I was like, oh, no way, that's pretty cool. Now I don't know, I think a lot of the call-outs were old, 70s, 80s call-outs, which is kind of cool. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, that'd be neat to eventually see someone post the YouTube video that's like, oh, this was from that. What's that guy?
The New Rockstars guy?
Yes, New Rockstars guy that really
digest. You're my hero.
Yeah. Really dissect the shit out of it. You're damn good at what you do, man. I'll give it to you. But so it would be interesting to kind of see something like that, go back and watch it and see all that stuff in it, because I felt like there was a lot of that in there. But yeah, so. Yeah,
I mean, like you said, the first 10 to 20 minutes, a slew of characters that you didn't know of. You jumped right into the scene. There was not a whole bunch of backstory, but you didn't need so much of it because it kind of explained it on the way.
Yeah.
The weasel is a weasel, and Boomerang Man has boomerangs. You know who Harley is, a couple other people are just generically.
Well, Captain Boomerang actually was from the first film.
Right.
And was he in Birds of Prey? I thought he was. I think he made a cameo. I'm not 100%. I'll throw it up there. But
yeah. I mean, like you said, the jumping in point was great. You weren't super lost, but it was easy to pick up on. But what I've noticed with James Gunn's movies, and unfortunately there's only 3 that I've watched to completion, are his soundtrack is very complementary to not only the scene, but the movie, and it fits so well. So even the intro with Johnny Cash coming in was a nice touch.
Talking about killing a guy.
Right.
Was it Journey Down the Long Run? Oh, and I'll throw it up there. I can't remember it, but he throws a lot of that, and then he does the Sad and Lonely song with Harley Quinn, and there was a few others, but those were the 2 that really stuck out in my mind, because it was like, oh damn, all right, and obviously very reasonably popular songs.
Right.
So, but yeah, with this. They dove into it. I love that Nathan Fillion played a guy that was just a total goober of a villain, detachable kid. That was funny as shit. I don't know why. It was just funny to watch. What they did with that, it was good. You could tell Nathan definitely had a hand in the writing of that character. But
literally a hand.
Yeah. I just like it when he takes his arms off and he starts slapping the guys with his arms, so his arms float in the air. And start slapping the enemies. And who says it? I forget who. And they're like, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
I think it was...
Was it Rick?
It was Yondu. I think it was.
No. Yondu's the shark.
No, Yondu, like Rucker. Long hair, guy with bouncing ball. Rucker.
Savant?
Yeah, Savant.
That's right. Yes.
He was just like, are you?
He was like the audience's surrogate in like the first scene.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh. But I mean, in that scene, you also saw how Lawler was just so extreme about things, and then just like
if you read the comics, though, Waller's, I mean, in the best of ways, I say this, a bitch.
Yeah.
But she's just a cold human being.
Right.
Like she is just like she knows what she wants and she'll do anything to get it. And like in this film, they definitely cross the line.
When we flip the page, when they cross the line, that's one of the knocks that I had. But I understand that the comic book and the material that it's based on, when she was able to sacrifice an entire city, and then hypothetically you could have spread. That's when I was like, I understand you're bad. I understand you need to get your mission across, but that's when I'm just like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, like, so that's the thing with Amanda Waller. Like, her character in the comic books, like, she's just vicious.
Right.
Vicious. And, like, there's been multiple times. Like, she knows the true identity of Batman, and that's her one ace in the hole. Like, she constantly threatens Batman. Like, if you do anything to me, I'll release your identity.
Right.
Like, she's just mean. Like, she's mean, and I think they nailed it in this one, especially because there was just a point where they decided, like, oh, they're gonna save the city,
right?
And stop this because they know it could spread, and Amanda Waller's freaking out because she just wants them to leave and let Starro essentially eradicate the entire city, and the people within the organization knock her out so they could help the Suicide Squad save the city, which is pretty cool. That's an interesting twist. I haven't seen that in the comics, that's for sure. Usually Waller works alone mostly, But I mean, she doesn't work alone, but you only see her work alone.
Right.
But yeah. So anyway, it's cool. Like the thing. It's just basically one long mission that just gets further and further complex because there's a lot of, oh, this happens, but wait a minute, 3 minutes earlier, this happened.
Which is a nice jumping point off of another thing I like. I like the staging of the scene titles, or like the transitions.
So basically in every scene, like if they were like, oh, 3 minutes earlier, like one was 3 minutes earlier or something like that, and it was on the foam on cleaner around the toilet bowl as Idris Elba was cleaning it. Like that was clever. He did that with a lot of scenes, like when they went to the big bad's place which is I want to say Joe. Oh man, the Nordic Jotunheim.
Yeah.
And so, they were going to go there. Now I lost my train of thought because I got Jotunheim in my head.
They're going to Jotunheim, but then they're like, wait, we have a mission before Jotunheim, and it gets erased, and it's Project Harley.
Yes, that's right. And then the smoke clears away with Jotunheim, and then Harley smoke comes up. Like, there's that, but there was also the point where they used all the debris as the Jotunheim name, which was cool.
And it was like set in a position where it spelled Jotunheim, but when you move the camera, it says
it's just garbage. Like that lined up perfectly for the shot, which was cool. Yeah. Like they honestly, fucking Gunn nailed this. I mean, cinematography was great. Like you didn't know what was really going on. Like Pete Davidson's character ends up being a fucking traitor right in the beginning. Right. Like gets his face blown off.
Kind of a douchebag,
which I think that's what was the point. Right. Though. I think that was the joke. And Pete Davidson, I'm sure, is very much aware of all of this. So it's like the fact that he's able to just be like, yeah, I'm going to be the douchebag that turns the Suicide Squad in. Right. Like that's funny. Like because everybody was so pissed when he got cast, and I was like. I'm like, are you serious? Like, there's worse. Like, in my opinion, like, he's not that bad of a guy. Come on, people. But anyway. But yeah, so that was cool. There was the mission. You saw them all get eradicated. And the funny thing is because they did the same thing where it's like, 3 days earlier for and then you meet the other Suicide Squad team, and then they interject themselves.
There's Team A, Team B.
Yeah.
Team A was
which is very comic booky.
Super expendable.
Yeah.
Team B was a little more in depth, and then it was just funny because like, if you didn't know anything about Suicide Squad, and if you didn't know anything about watching too much of the trailers and going in depth, you're like, oh, this is the movie, and all of them get eradicated in the first 10 minutes. Like, what movie is left? Because you think everyone's dead.
Yeah.
Which is a nice transition.
Well, I mean, I knew there. Honestly, what I thought was going to happen is they were all going to get eradicated, and then they were going to recruit Idris Elba, because I knew Idris Elba was in the film.
Right.
It was like
I forgot till it said 3 minutes later on the toilet bowl. Like,
really?
This guy. Look.
Yeah. But yeah, but like, it was interesting with like, the casting choices. You could definitely tell Gunn had a lot of push in the casting choices. His brother played Weasel.
Yeah. He also played.
I want to know who played the mom, because if that was his mom, I want to give him a thumbs up for that move.
I'll get to that in a second. James Gunn's brother also had another cameo role who was making fun of Polka Dot Man inside the jail.
He was Calendar Man.
Oh, he was Calendar Man. Okay.
Yeah.
And then secondarily, yes,
Sean Gunn, by the way.
Sean Gunn. Yes, actually, I have his autograph.
Oh, really?
Yes, met him at a comic convention. But the interesting thing is, I'll take a picture and send it to Shaver. You can throw it up there.
Sure.
What do you call it? The mom. Whoever played the mom is like the
ultimate white like mid America mom.
It was like the second all-star of this movie. Have you seen this? Like, no offense, you expect Idris Elba to be fantastic.
Yeah.
You expect Margot Robbie to do well as Harley Quinn, and other aspects. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, so you can laugh at it or comment or like or dislike or subscribe. In terms of that, I honestly think the number 2 best actor was the mom, playing all those damn roles.
Yeah.
And number 1 was John Cena.
Yes.
Because honestly, in my heart, I know John Cena in terms of the wrestler. I'm not a huge wrestler-phile or whatever you want to call it. I know a bit of his background. I've watched another TV show that he's in. I know he's a great-hearted human being, does a lot of stuff for Make-A-Wish, and he does great things for charity. But in terms of the range and actually just watching him act, and yes, he kind of plays a douchebag, which it's easy for
That's the point.
Yeah, it's easy to transition, but he did very, very well in my opinion.
Yeah. And like that's just it. Is like John Cena, I'll give it to him. Like a lot of people like to hate on the WWE. Yeah, you can't see him. I can't see him. But yeah, so like I didn't even watch WWE at that time. I call it WWE. It'll always be WWF in my head. But anyway,
World Wildlife Foundation.
Yeah, exactly. Panda. Yeah.
Sexual harassment.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the Cena really knocked it out of the park on this one. I think he did really great acting. His like deadpan, like there's a point when him and Bloodsport, Idris Elba's character, kind of do like a kill off thing when they're walking through the thing, and they're like doing who could do more badass kill, which is hilarious.
Yeah. The one-upping scene.
Yeah, basically, and that was great. Like, and it pays off in the end, because eventually you find out Cena is just in it for the government, because no matter what, he just wants liberty.
Yeah.
And peace at all costs, no matter the cost.
Right.
And which is, I mean, almost kind of the American way when you really sadly think about it.
Right.
So it's like, that was kind of fun for them to kind of play with that a little bit, and the toilet bowl helmet. Like that was awesome,
and that was great too, because the so many non-subtle and subtle ironies in the movie, where Savant in the beginning scene kills a canary with a mouse.
Goldfinch.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I know birds. I know it's very weird. My dad's a big bird fanatic.
Charles Darwin.
Yeah, exactly.
But he kills a goldfinch with a rubber ball, and then when he gets destroyed and his dead corpse is lying there, a goldfinch comes and eats his corpse. Mm-hmm. I also thought it was funny because
there's also another goldfinch when Harley Quinn is going through the mansion after she kills her potential suitor.
Yeah.
There's a goldfinch that lands when all the flowers are exploding out behind her. It lands on I don't know why, it lands on like a banister and just sits there for a second, and I'm like, I'm gonna research it and throw it up there. Hopefully,
see if there's meaning behind it.
If there's a meaning behind a goldfinch.
The other thing was just like like you mentioned, John Cena's helmet was called out by Death Sport.
Bloodsport?
Bloodsport, sorry.
Is it Bloodsport? No.
Is that the movie?
I know, I'm thinking about the movie.
Either way, he calls it a toilet bowl helmet, essentially. And it's ironic because Cena then uses...
Toilet seat.
Yeah, part of either a toilet seat or a bathroom item to kill the other guy right in the heart because it's ceramic or whatever goes into the heart.
Oh, the tile.
Yeah, so it's a kind of an irony, either like almost like 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of irony / subtle and more non-subtle irony, which I found very...
I didn't catch that, yeah. That's a good point, because, that's how they kill Rick Flag. He kills Rick Flag, because he grabs a piece of tile and stabs it into his heart. Mm-hmm. But the thing that's interesting is like at the end, I don't know if you caught it, but they did say no one in the Suicide Squad really dies. And like it was, or nothing's official or something like that, essentially, which was interesting because at the end we see that Peacemaker actually lived, even though he got shot in the throat, and then Weasel, after drowning, somehow gets up and lives. Yeah. So I wonder if there's something like, Waller developed some kind of, which in DCEU universe there is the Lazarus Pits. And there's another one, and I can't remember it off the top of my head right now, so you have to excuse me.
Is that what Ra's al Ghul uses?
Yes.
Okay.
And there's another one, but anyway, Joker eventually utilizes the Lazarus Pits, and so that's how he's been able to, like, come back in the way he has. They kind of made that canon a little bit.
Okay.
So anyway, it was interesting, like, maybe they have something with that.
Right.
Who knows? That would be cool if they did that,
right.
In my opinion.
I mean, the end sequence automatically makes you believe that there's going to be a sequel to this movie.
Well, there will be, no question.
We'll have to see this. Of the shooting of this movie, it is the day of release, so we don't know the numbers per se.
Yeah.
But I think it's gotten good enough reviews and push that it's going to be pretty popular.
Yeah, I mean, even the people that want to kill it with like the bad reviews and whatever else. Honestly, this is great fun. Like I think it's pretty bulletproof in my opinion.
I don't think anything's bulletproof, but yeah.
No, I disagree. Because you talk about the majority. And,
right.
In my opinion, if you have the great majority that are like, no, this is a great film, then
I would say bulletproof in the extent of, is this movie quality? Yes. But there can always be extenuating circumstances that will prevent a second movie from being made.
Are you talking about the contract crap?
No.
Oh.
That's a theory that I'll come up with later. But it's essentially if one of the main characters in this movie, like if something, like even a gun instance where something inflammatory comes out and you have to recast someone. Like, can you recast someone? Of course. Will it be as iconic? Will they do as good of a job? We don't know. So, until the movie is in post, I never believe that the movie is fully realized.
Sure. Well, I just read today, I was a big fan of Chronicle, the movie. Did you ever watch that movie? Highly recommend it. Michael B. Jordan, one of his first films, actually.
Okay.
I love him,
You mean
by
not
the way.
Fantastic Four?
Yeah, definitely not Fantastic. He's really good in that one. He kind of plays like a football jock in the film, but he's endearing because eventually, like, it's three misfits that just happen to be friends, kind of, or happen to be acquaintances and interject into a certain spot where they get their superpowers.
Okay.
And then they blossom as best friends and develop their superpowers.
Okay.
It's really Josh Trank, and it's basically what gave him the Fantastic Four film.
Oh.
Yes. And it's really fucking good, but they just greenlit the sequel 10 years later.
Right.
Maybe more than that. But yeah, so anyway, very good film. Highly recommend it. Chronicle. Yeah. But yeah, so anyway, back to Suicide Squad. Like, the thing that's really good about this, in my opinion, is just, it was very lighthearted. It's definitely a popcorn flick, 1000%. It's a superhero film. Are you looking for depth here? No. Are you looking for serious, like, emotional pull? No.
Right.
Like, is the character development done well? I think so, in my opinion.
I mean,
Bloodsport's kind of run of the mill. I feel like Bloodsport, because they couldn't get Will Smith back, was literally a surrogate for fucking.
Those were they the same character?
Deadshot.
Oh yeah, okay. So
well, no, Deadshot literally has a daughter that he's trying to get to, and that's like his one thing that like strives him to do what he does to be good.
Right.
So he could be back with his daughter, and essentially Bloodsport becomes that in this film.
Like, even though like a story isn't completely fleshed out, the verbal altercation between him and his daughter made it more real. Secondarily, James Gunn does really well at making characters relatable and interesting.
Yeah.
The only type of backstory I really wanted and I didn't like about the film was I needed a little more for the Thinker. Because I knew nothing about the Thinker, and like the probes in his head, had no idea how that came along. And I know I'm not a DC fan, so it should be common knowledge.
It's all about Starro. So Starro in the comics, he's like a being. Like he didn't need the starfish. He actually could just connect with your head instantly.
You're talking about the Thinker or the
No,
Star? Oh,
Starro.
Okay.
And so Thinker developed all those little plugs in his head to prevent Starro from taking his body over in the comics.
Got it. So that, because even in the flashback, the Thinker had less probes in his head in the flashback than he did at the end. And so if I had a little more flesh out of what the hell those were and why, it honestly, if you weren't in a superhero type of film, you'd just think he was in a catastrophic scaffolding fall. And they had to cut it and leave it in his head at that point.
Well, it's like, what's his name? Capaldi, I think his name is. The guy who played Doctor Who, he's the Thinker.
Okay.
And he kind of gave me more Brainiac vibes with all the plugs in his head, sort of.
Brainiac's, is that
Superman's.
The big green head, or is that?
Yes, okay. Green head, and then he's got red orbs in it.
Okay.
He was fine. I think he was just kind of there to propel the story. And that could be possibly, in my opinion, the weakest part of the film.
Okay.
Was the Thinker's plot, because he was just kind of there for Starro, which is fine. And honestly, I loved Starro's whole final scene, because with the way that they made him move around and everything else like that, like every step he took, he jiggled.
Yeah.
like Stay Puft Marshmallow Man that was like overweight or something like that.
That was just actually a second knock for me.
Really?
Because,
it was very comic booky for me.
The movement was funny when he was outside of the cylindrical thing.
Yes.
Or what's it called? Jotunheim?
Oh, yeah.
So the thing was, he was trapped in a cell, essentially.
Building.
Yeah. And the thing is when he was breaking free, I had a lot of it was really eerie, because not only did the tentacles come out, and that was a little eerie for me, but also when he was trying to grab his one, I don't know, what is a starfish appendage called?
Star and
yeah,
a limb.
And the limb, when it was trying to reach for the Rat Queen Part version 2 or whatever.
Oh, okay.
And
Ratcatcher 2.
Yeah, the way it was just jamming and stuff, it just was very phallic and very okay, this is kind of
But in its defense, I don't know if you know starfish very well.
No, I mean...
I do. I don't know why. I'm a big aquatic guy. I should have probably been a marine biologist, in all honesty.
No.
The point is starfish actually have all that stuff.
Right.
And
the tentacles too?
Yep.
Oh.
Yep.
And then even the pulsating
that I can't say. I don't.
That
know
was
about
also
that.
creepy to me.
Yeah, that was creepy. But so basically, he creates children by opening up his armpit, and then there's weavy flesh that opens up, and then starfish fly out. I mean, the miniature versions of him, essentially. So he can take people over and make them his pawn, essentially. Which, in the comic book, Starro would just take over your mind.
So, yeah, that was a really interesting moot point. Meh.
Yeah. No, but, with...
marine biology and starfish.
No, I think they nailed it with the movement and stuff like that. You could tell they did certain things, King Shark, I think it's Nanue? Maybe. I don't know. I won't lie, guys. like I'm a fan of Suicide Squad, and I read some of them, but at least in the time that I read them, like it was hit or miss. It was very much hit or miss.
Sure.
Like King Shark was always King Shark in the comics.
Yeah.
He wasn't known as the Nue, I think is what his name is.
That started with an A, like
It's very. I think Pacific Islander.
Okay.
But is where his name comes from. But because it's yeah. Exactly. So really good. You know, the thing that's really neat is how many breakout, like, pretty decent nerd, at least nerd actors that they got for this film was pretty cool in my opinion. Like, I don't think Sylvester Stallone maybe doesn't really fall in that category, but he fucking played King Shark.
I'm surprised they didn't do the Baby Shark do somewhere in that movie.
The you know, they did Weasel with Sean Gunn. Who else was there? But well, Ratcatcher, for instance. There was like an ongoing like joke with how Bloodsport hated rats because of some childhood trauma that he didn't really divulge too much, but that he was basically locked in a crate with rats.
Nanue.
Okay. So yeah, so it was interesting in that way, like the humor with that. There's just a lot of like, there's even like the thing I'll give Gunn is there's a lot of humor in that film where he introduces a joke in the start of the film and then all of a sudden
the payoff
comes. Yeah, the payoff comes much later in the film. And you're like, oh my god, like look at that, like this person died because of this. That's hilarious. Like that's good stuff in my opinion. Good humor, good writing, good directing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you know, that was solid. Starro, the final fight was 100% Hollywood bullshit. Like, destroy everything.
Like Michael Bay bullshit. Almost,
in my opinion. I mean, it's not as bad because it wasn't just useless explosions.
It had a woman with jugs running in one scene.
It did, actually. Twice. I think it was towards the beginning and the end. Bookended it. Which is fine. And as a straight man, I like that shit. But, you know, yeah, especially when it's an attractive Hispanic woman from the South Americans. Where were they from? It was filmed in Panama, so we'll say she's Pan. But yeah, so like it's very bombastic. It's very dumb. There's a scene where I'm just kind of eye rolled where Starro's trying to crush Harley Quinn, and she's running on a rooftop, and the roof's like collapsing behind her because Starro's crushing it. And I just kind of was like, oh, like totally Hollywood, like really, like you know. But I mean, they had to throw it in there, I guess.
Right.
People like that shit. But you know, good overall. Harley Quinn, I actually liked her sequence. There was a suitor. He was actually he was the president or something like that of the country that they were trying to stop.
He was the acting president after someone died.
That's right, because they assassinated him.
Yeah.
And so he was courting Harley Quinn, and like basically that's when you kind of get the Birds of Prey perspective where it goes into her mind and you start seeing all the shit that she thinks she's seeing, basically. And it's good. It's actually pretty good. You get to see the insanity that she is and stuff like that. And then he actually even shows it at the end where she's like, oh, you're Milton. And he's like, what? No. And she's like, yeah, you said your name was Milton. I never said my name was Milton. And in fact, he did not say his name was Milton. They were talking about someone else's name being Milton and how uncommon it was. And because Harley Quinn's so crazy, she just thought Bloodsport's name was Milton.
Right. And to kind of piggyback how there were some Hollywood scenes, like, I've gone over a couple points I didn't like. I think, honestly, after, like, the first initial hit of, you know, the B-team dying, there were some slow points. Like, and mind you, it's probably because I had 4 hours of sleep, but I definitely nodded off, like, twice in the beginning part of the movie. It had a good start.
Okay.
especially like when they were driving around in the party van, if you will.
Oh yeah, the mystery machine, I called it. Because it almost had the exact same paint scheme, like with the graphic on the side.
So basically, it was good. Like, we're not going to say this is a bad movie by any stretch, but there are definitely points that we thought could have been better, and one of them is the progression is it was like, pow, all right, awesome, I'm locked in, and then it took a turn. It wasn't horrible. It just tried to kind of, the extrapolation and the building of the story got a little too monotonous for me, and that's when I kind of zonked out a couple times.
I think, to counterpoint you, though, would be like to say, like, he tried to switch up the origin story. Instead of giving you the origin story first and then throwing you into the action, he did the opposite. He threw you into the action, everybody died, and then he gave you the backstory.
No, for sure.
And, like, for me, I felt like that was okay. Like, I get what you're saying 100%. But for me, I enjoyed it just because it was different, a different approach.
Right.
Like, it wasn't run-of-the-mill. Like, oh, you got bit by a spider. Oh, wait a minute, you found out you could cling to walls. All right, well, I'm going to develop some kind of thing that can make me swing from the rooftops. Like, that kind of a thing. So, like with this, it was, you got to see everybody died, and then you got to see their story leading up to that point, essentially.
It almost feels like when you're like a kid, and you're like writing an essay or a story, and you like get like that first paragraph and a half, and you're like, this is complete crap, and you just erase everything.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, this team sucks, erase. And go back.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, yeah, I could see that, and like, but I think that's what, like, I don't know, but also at the same time I kind of lean back on, like, I always kind of knew that they were all going to die for the most part.
But yeah, it was interesting.
Well, the only reason why is I followed this one a little bit, mostly because I like IGN a lot. I rely on their nerd news a lot.
Right.
But they posted a lot about James Gunn and how Warner Brothers basically they were like, you could kill anybody, but in my mind I was like, you can't kill Harley Quinn and you can't kill this person or whatever.
Sure.
But they did kill one person that I didn't think they were going to kill. Rick Flag.
Okay.
If he's dead.
Was he in the first one too, or no?
Yes.
Okay.
He basically was kind of Harley Quinn's, like,
love
interest,
okay.
if you will, more or less. And they kind of played on that a little bit, but it was mostly... Honestly, Rick Flag was kind of a secondary character in this film, which was kind of interesting.
He had his poignant moments, but it was definitely...
I mean, don't get me wrong, what's the actor's name? I forget his name. I liked him in Altered Carbon. Decent, but I will say he's very one-note.
Sure.
Kind of only plays like a big-ass, like, oh, I'll get the job done.
Well, I mean, and that's probably why killing him wasn't a huge, substantial thing, because if you're going to one-note it every movie...
Well, in the comics, Rick Flag is always there, because he's always the leader of the team to keep them in check.
Oh.
Yes.
Well,
so that's why it was a little shocking, at least for me.
Could be also that he's not dead.
I guarantee you he's not. Just because he got a piece of... If fucking Peacemaker can survive with a bullet through the neck, I think Rick Flag could live with a piece of ceramic through the heart. I don't know.
No, I mean...
My opinion.
It's up to see what happens. A couple other just closing thoughts before my wild conspiracy theory. This is for me the first good comic book DC movie that I've seen since the Batman series. Now, mind you, haven't watched Wonder Woman, haven't watched Shazam, have not even watched any of the bad ones either.
Have you haven't watched Zack Snyder cut, have you?
No.
Justice League?
No.
It's worth it.
So, I think it's a very nicely done movie. It would make me want to look at more movies in the DC universe, but I will still be forever loyal to the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm just thinking to myself, if you watch the Schneider cut of Justice League, clear your schedule.
Is that 3 hours?
4.
4, okay.
Over 4 hours.
Oh, Jesus. But, I mean, and we can't say enough good things about it. We both like the movie. We're both leaning hard into an 8 for this movie in terms of rating.
Definitely an 8, maybe more.
Yeah. For me personally, I have this theory. You could, make fun of me 5 years down the line if this is still a thing. But
you called it.
Yeah. What?
Or you called it.
Yeah, and then I'm a genius again once. But I honestly think there's going to be exclusivity deals for directors.
Oh, you're touching on this.
Yes.
Okay.
Because honestly, like, when you have a monumental force, and mind you, hold on, monumental force that creates great movies, and if you want them not to create movies for other companies to make them just as much money, and I understand that you can't legally do that, but if you find a way where you're like, okay...
You know what that way is?
No.
You just lock them up for schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real here. The only reason why James Gunn got this job was because he was fired from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Sure.
So it's like, you know, they basically locked him up so he couldn't do anything else. And think about Taika Waititi, or Taika Waititi. Anyway, he plays fucking Ratcatcher, #1, like, which is surprising as shit. Like, it's just like, I don't know. I love that guy. I don't know what it is, but he just has like a certain charm about him. It look kind of like just a certain, like, you want to hug him, like, you know.
Even though he was a heroin addict or whatever drug of choice that was in his arm, he was a very heart of gold type of character. How he portrayed it, you felt bad for him because he was addicted to drugs, but also he was good-hearted and tried as hard as he could to take care of his daughter.
Yeah.
But in terms of locking people up for exclusivity, I think it would be a great tactic for Marvel to use to prevent the oncoming possible momentum that this could create for the DCU. Because not only does Zack Snyder Cut do much better than the original Justice League, but also this particular Suicide Squad is probably going to outperform most of the movies, especially the letdown that was Wonder Woman 1984.
Oh, Jesus God.
So with that said, is there going to be exclusivity? Or possibly just a jam-packed schedule where, you know, let's say James Gunn is signed for Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and if they just make him a director in like 8 episodes of What If, yeah, you can lock him up for a good solid 2.5, 4 years.
Well, supposedly, they're already kind of in the talks of continuing said Suicide Squad, supposedly. There's also, they're going to do an episodic Peacemaker show, where James Gunn is actually the writer and director of it.
The intro was doo-doo-doo-doo.
Yeah. And honestly, more John Cena as Peacemaker would be great.
Yeah.
Honestly, because he was pretty good.
Yeah.
But he's just like, he's a dude, bro, essentially.
Right.
Like, you know, who doesn't give a shit, which is kind of funny. It plays well. Because he looks like one. I mean, all respect, you know, but it's just funny because he's just like, he has such a Spartacus-looking motherfucker face, you know, he's just like, and he's buff as hell.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then the point when he came out in just his underwear.
It was just like,
he's just standing there
like Dr. Manhattan, and it's like, whoa, what's going on in this scene?
I can see everything. Yeah, that was funny.
But yeah, that's my crazy theory. We both think that this movie is great. We love doing these just because we enjoy, you know, pop culture, we enjoy comic books, and we enjoy geek culture.
Especially this shit.
Yeah. Before I try to wrap this up, is there anything else that you wanted to add or throw in there for Suicide Squad? Or the Suicide Squad, excuse me.
You know, like I said, I think I like the direction that DC is trying to take. They're trying to give their directors a little more power. Right. They did it with Wonder Woman 1984.
Failed.
I think it kind of backfired on them. Yeah. The thing I like about this, I think DC's on track. We have fucking Black Adam coming out with The Rock, which is very exciting for me. Black Adam's a very badass supervillain in my opinion, because he's a broken anti-hero, essentially.
So, Venomish?
Yes. Okay. But maybe a little dark. Only because Venom doesn't rule a country, essentially, that is villainous, more or less, whereas Black Adam does. Okay. You know. Black Adam's country essentially harbors super people because they're vilified by the places that they live, essentially. Okay. So Doctor Doom style, kind of.
Okay.
It's kind of, if I could compare him to somebody.
So Latveria, but for a refugee camp for...
And it's in Egypt, yes.
Okay. Egypt, interesting.
Yes.
Yes? Do you want
So, believe it or not, Black Adam is Egyption. But,
the Rock is the Scorpion King. Makes sense. Full circle.
Oh, wow.
Full circle.
I didn't even think about that. Huh. It's a circle. But yeah, so, like, I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the next Shazam movie because Shazam was great to me. I fucking laughed so hard at that film. Like, it's great. Absolutely great. Like, it's very heartfelt too. So, and I think DC's kind of figuring that out finally. Whereas they always went for the dark and brooding superhero flick. And I understand why, to diversify themselves from the Marvel universe, because Marvel's, a little more happy-go-lucky up until Infinity War.
Yeah.
Outside of Captain America, maybe.
It depends on the origin story. Like Guardians of the Galaxy, mom has cancer and then you get abducted.
Well, but that's like literally like 5 minutes tops of the film.
Yeah.
Whereas like the rest of the film's mostly happy-go-lucky.
Okay.
Do you disagree?
No, just the thing is in terms of a dark perspective, I believe a dark perspective has been set in DC's DNA since Tim Burton, because he's a dark themed person. So the thing
it's because Batman '89 fucking basically created the comic book movie industry as we know it.
So the thing is so you got Batman Returns, dark movies. So then you got Batman Forever, and the question is, if you go completely not dark, people will hate it and it'll be unfamiliar. You do just as much dark, you're just copying off of Tim Burton. You do the polar opposite, you're Adam West. So you had to kind of skate that line where it was dark, but also appealing to a new generation of Batman fans. And that's why, honestly, it was a mediocre movie at best. And then with Batman and Robin, they're like, at this point, let's fucking put all the great...
I don't think Batman... I will have to research it, but I don't think Batman Forever was a failure as much as you think it was.
I'm not saying it was a failure. I'm saying...
Financially.
I'm saying it was not a great movie.
No. By all means. I mean, watching... I loved Batman Forever as a child. Like, oh my god. Like, I don't know. I just had this thing for Val Kilmer too as a kid. Like, I always thought he was so great. Like Tombstone, I loved Top Gun. Yeah. And like when he played Batman, I was like, oh my god. But so the thing with
and Blunt Man.
Yeah, Blunt Man. I forgot about that. But yeah, so anyway, like the thing that I just liked about Batman Forever was it actually, as a kid, like the darkness actually scared me.
Sure.
Like how dark Joker was and stuff like that, and like not watching it now, it's like nothing. But go ahead.
Like the thing is you're tiptoeing a dark path. Batman Robin, even though it's hot garbage, had dark themes. Most of it seemed like it was shot at nighttime anyways. And then you went into a conundrum, right? You had Batman and Robin, which hypothetically was a flop, and then you're just like, what the hell happened in this movie? And it's bad when the bright spot is Chris O'Donnell doing a halfway decent Robin was one of the bright spots, right? Mm-hmm. Because Mr. Freeze with Arnold Schwarzenegger, no offense to him, wasn't that great.
Don't get me wrong. I love Arnold. He's a personal idol of mine. But he is a mediocre actor at best.
Sure. And then Tommy Lee Jones, even though he's a phenomenal actor, he was very...
there was a lot of... I guess there was a lot of turmoil with him taking the role of Two-Face, apparently.
And still...
And they screwed over Billy D. Williams, by the way.
Was he the original one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the thing is that you
Hollywood man.
You danced around this dark line, and then, you see that when Marvel created their preliminary live-action X-Men, Spider-Man, darker themes, not dark like, oh my god, like emo dark, but darker suits. Most of the scenes are nighttime. You had the juxtaposition of the sunlight in Manhattan for Spider-Man. and all that type of stuff. So you wanted to follow that trajectory with Batman Begins and all the Superman movies. So your whole arc, even though you say darkness is something that DC is kind of doing better than Marvel, I think that's...
No. I say mostly they do darker stories than Marvel because they're trying to differentiate
but
themselves.
Isn't that almost like a one-note thing from 1989 all the way to now?
Sure. Oh, I'm not bashing. I'm not saying it's a good thing by any sense. Like, I think that's what makes Shazam so refreshing to me is because it's like we have a DC superhero film that's very lighthearted. Honestly, it kind of almost feels like Marvel movie.
Right. Well, and that's my point there. Whereas, so you had more serious action flicks being Iron Man, Captain America, and Hulk, right? Transitioning to Thor Ragnarok, Ant-Man and Wasp, and things like that. So I think in the years to come, you're going to see the genre of superhero movies take an evolutionary step, because honestly, what's going to happen is, in terms of anything, you had a point where vampire movies ruled the earth. You had a point where dinosaur movies or whatever movies. Superhero movies will become stagnant in the next 20 years. And the thing is I think with these random characters that kind of Marvel's unbagging and just different storylines, it's keeping it refreshing and almost on your toes. It's not fantastic. Everyone's not going to be like a perfect 10. But the thing is with the characters, yes, Suicide Squad is an exception with a lot of B, C characters. In terms of the DC universe, you're pushing Batman, you're pushing Flash, you're pushing Superman, you're pushing Wonder Woman, and eventually you're getting a Blue Beetle.
No, there's more than that. I mean, there's Martian Manhunter, there's Green Lantern, there's that's the thing that's also tragic in a way. Like, Martian Manhunter is a good superhero, and he should be introduced eventually. Green Lantern needs to be done justice, because his story is actually very good. If you actually, like, he's one of the few superheroes outside of Batman. I'm trying to think who else. Maybe. I mean, everybody's kind of got one, especially in the Marvel universe, but with Green Lantern, the fact that Sinestro, his mentor, ends up becoming his worst enemy, like, that's really cool. That could be developed into a really goddamn good story.
Right.
And, like, Flash's potential is, like, ridiculous, because he essentially controls the multiverse. He can fuck with it, basically. Sure. And it's like,
but with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. And both are red. But but there's things like that. There's things with, like, the Anti-Monitor, Darkseid, good stuff. But yeah, that's the thing that I always liked was, like, because they did death metal and things like that, and, like, has anything ever truly stuck in DC Comics as of late? No, I guess not, because Batman and Catwoman ended up not really being a thing, even though that was made into a huge deal.
To kind of wrap this back around to the Suicide Squad, we hope to do more for DC, Marvel, Star Wars, and other pop culture things. We greatly enjoy this aspect, but you now know our opinions of not only the Suicide Squad, but a lot of other things. So, thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Later.